Really, really grateful that you're back with us. The chairman of the executive of the Jewish Agency had to leave, but I'm with Professor Marty Linsky from Harvard, and Rabbi Laura Janet Klauser, senior rabbi to the Reform movement in the United Kingdom. And we are having a global conversation since I'm in Jerusalem, Marty's in New York, and Laura's in London. And so I suppose we're trying to pull back together. We started this a little while ago, and we were taken over by some insidious outsiders, which feels not uncanny relative to what we're facing globally and the virus. And so we are going to ask, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and we're going to chat, and then we're going to post this on Facebook to the 1,400 good people that were really intentional about their time and wanted to have a good conversation about what leadership is right now. So my first question is, what has this experience been like for you over the past few weeks? Tell us how you are. Rabbi Laura, maybe you start.
So I'm up and down. We are lucky because we are using electronics, and part of me feels, wow, look at this, we've reinvented Judaism. We've taken services, teaching, pastoral online. And so I felt the massive cup half full, and just incredibly proud of our clergy. I just watched a colleague of mine, a much younger colleague, do a funeral for an older colleague who died of coronavirus. And here's this young woman holding such a thing, doing it on Zoom. We have decided not to have mourners at funerals in order to protect the funeral team and other mourners and the clergy. So we've done a great job in holding this. And I'm also feeling sad. And I think the interrupted Zoom call that we had with the troll reminds us not just of human capacity to do things like that, but actually we are not business as usual. And this is a bit of a veneer, the Zoom. And we are not in the same room. I love you and I'm in a completely different country. And however much it's lovely to see your face, we're not in the same room when we can't hold hands.
Mm. Yeah, that's tough. Mm. Marty.
I share Rabbi Laura's perspective and description of her journey. For me, in my interactions with people, both on kind of formal and informal basis, as well as my own experience, this is as much of an emotional challenge as it is a cognitive or even behavioral challenge. You know, I can learn to keep my hands off my face. I'm a grown up, I know how to do that. It takes some work and some attention and discipline. But I don't know how to cope with the feelings of uncertainty and sadness. My heart goes out to people who are alone. The idea of waking up every morning with someone else in bed with you, and it's a joy, and I can't imagine what it's like to wake up alone. So I've been trying to pay special attention to the half a dozen or 8 people I know that are all alone. And they're not just old people, they're all over the place. And the second thing is that I'm struck by is how incredibly differentiated the impact of the virus is on people, even people in my own surround, people that I know. My son has a podcast, my youngest has a podcast company. He's got 20 employees, and they were bought last year by a larger company. And they've had to reduce everybody's pay by 10%. And he's got 20 employees, and the differentiated impact of that 10% reduction. For some people, you know, he's got one of his employees who's living with her parents out in the Hamptons and Long Island, and she won't even notice. And then he's got another employee who's got a little kid and it's a single parent. And this means she's going to have to cut back on some food this week. You know, I mean, it's just, it's crazy. And the privilege that I've experienced all my life is manifesting itself again. You know, yes, it's a pain in the neck. It's very inconvenient. But I'm across the street from Central Park, this absolutely gorgeous facility. And you know, I walked there for an hour today. I barely saw anybody, but I did see the tents that are set up as hospitals across from Mount Sinai. As a reminder that there are lots of people much more inconvenienced, to say the least, than I am.
Sarah, how are you?
I am very grateful for people that are showing support in so many different ways. And I feel like that's a good question, because there are certain people, I suppose, in different places that, you know, you feel committed to do a lot of things for a lot of people as a mom, as somebody who's in charge of a leadership center. So I suppose that your question is a reminder to me that you also ask the people that might not be asked how they're feeling. And I'm okay. I feel better that you asked. That's probably the best answer right now. What are people expecting for you in your roles right now? Marty, you have a different role, but
I think it's very different for people like you who are senior authority in an organization than people from like me who are kind of gadflies. If you are responsible for an organization, then I think the demands on you are much more clear and really more important in a way than, you know, my flitting around, hearing people's stories and commenting on them. If you're running an organization, if you're responsible for a large team, even if you're not in the senior role, it is critically important that you be present. There's no such thing as over communication, and that you be empathetic. I don't worry about Rabbi Laura's empathy or Sarah, your empathy, but constantly being empathetic is critical. It's almost like the words don't matter. If you can be present and you can be empathetic. There are two other things that I would say to people who are in senior roles in organizations. And they're a little bit contradictory, but I think they're both relevant. The first is that to try to resist predicting the future. You know, try to resist setting milestones, which you either overshoot or undershoot. I think predicting the future is a work avoidance mechanism. Saying that, I think trying to invent the future is not work avoidance. That is, this is a time where the values that are most important to you can be given life and given air and become enduring for people, whether they're human relationships, whether they are honesty, whether they are empathy, commitment to certain purposes. This is an opportunity to choose among all the values that you love and care about, the ones that are really enduring, and make those manifest, live by them, and model them for other people. Second thing is this balance between being relentlessly optimistic. We will get through this, and being brutally realistic at the same time, so that you don't choose between optimism and realism. You are totally relentlessly optimistic and brutally realistic at the same time. I think that is very comforting to people, and it's very nurturing and supportive. The last point I would make for someone in your kind of role, Sarah, is if there are some pet projects, some experiments you've always wanted to run, this might not be a bad time to try one. People are now open to possibilities that they wouldn't be open to in other times. So if you think about all the things that are sitting on your idea shelf, and knowing you, Sarah, I know that list is probably longer than my arm. It might be interesting to try something that you've wanted to try, to run an experiment, to see how it works when people are open to the possibilities that they have been before. So I think your role and the role of people who are in senior roles in organizations is very important and very different than it is for the rest of us who are just flitting around.
Thanks, Marty. It's an invitation I hope to take up. Rabbi Laura, you have a big role right now.
Well, yes. Well, I don't know, Angelique, talk about being realistic. Processing what Marty said, which I really loved. I think people are expecting, somewhere subconsciously, they're expecting me to be well. Mm-hmm. And if I get ill, then people have compassion. But I think people in some way need us to be well and keep going.
Yes.
And to be present and so on. To be upbeat, supportive, calm, all those things are very important. We have a system in Britain of furloughing, which the government is supporting, whereby the government will pay 80% of people's salaries. So we've furloughed, which basically means they can't work for 2 months, some of our staff team today. I mean, they knew it for a while. And even though they know that this is a way of keeping their jobs, it's very frightening for people. So the balance between being realistic and also honest is really important. What else are people expecting? And people are expecting to have jobs, or us to do, they're not, or let's say it differently, they're not necessarily expecting to have jobs, they're expecting us to do our very best so they have a job. Mm-hmm. Regarding our congregations and my clergy colleagues, they are expecting support, deserving actually, of loads of support. They're giving them loads of tools very quickly, which we've done. Online resources, online Siddur, online Haggadah, online Shiva books, online funerals, all that stuff. They are expecting us to help them with the technical, which we've done. So a lot of it is very tachlis and practical, and also to cheerlead them. And then they are expecting us, or me, to be a colleague, to be alongside, and occasionally, I think, to take the difficult decisions, which I have also done, which has been very, very hard.
What's an example of that, Laura?
Yeah, I was just about to ask. Good one.
So we decided, and at one point, I made the decision that we would not have mourners at funerals. We were discussing it as a rabbinic assembly and rabbis and cantors, and it was clear that some of my colleagues were very concerned, those especially who are doing lots of funerals. I've got an Orthodox colleague who just texted me, said that he's doing 4 funerals in 4 hours, and then the Shiva. Yeah, some for his colleagues who are not well. So one of my colleagues, two colleagues, they're doing 5 between them this week. I mean, and it's going to be more. And I surveyed them and said, answer me. And they, with 2 options, which one was option which is very immediate family, the other one is none, just on Zoom. And there were enough people saying on Zoom. And actually, I think that they got the veto, because you have to do this in solidarity. Anyway, there were also colleagues, because they're fantabulous people, who were very angry and anxious And anger and anxiety are two sides of the same coin, and people were very anxious, so they were very angry, because they want to be what we're trained to be. We are built to be alongside people when they are feeling horrendous. And now you're telling me I'm not going to? So, and also I suppose because I've been involved in a national group here about mass deaths, so I know predictions, and I did not want to freak people out talking about your realistic honesty thing. Actually, telling people just how bad people think it's going to be, I think will paralyze people in some ways. But I know our responsibility in how many funerals and cremations we're going to be doing. So that was a very difficult decision, and I really, really love being brave, and I really love being loved. They just don't go together.
No.
Yeah, that's really big. Being brave and being loved. Yeah.
Do you, Rabbi Laura, does it undermine or strengthen you to display that vulnerability to your colleagues and congregants?
In general, I always have, absolutely, and I've cried on the bimmer and at funerals and so on, in a way that people don't have to look after me, not in that kind of like to me, but yeah, no, in general, yes. I didn't want to do this is really hard for me, because it's not about me. I think that there are times I didn't do that at all to my colleagues. We made a decision, with the chair of assembly and also the convener of our Beit Din. But at one point I just said, right, this is enough. We've got to decide this. And I didn't do, I'm really sorry, this is heartbreaking, because at that point in time, I do not want anyone to look after me. I just they need to be looking after themselves, and I'm there to look after them. There are lots of times I do show vulnerability, loads, but not this one.
Yeah, just even in the up and down of the personal journey, independent of the kind of decisions you make. You started off when Sarah asked you by saying something like, "I've got good days and bad days," or something like that. It does feel to me that people see your humanity in that way. Probably is okay, is important. It's not about you. It's about people understanding that you're not an automaton, but you're going through this journey yourself.
Yeah. I think that this is a good, last week I did a very woohoo Shabbat message about reinventing Judaism, and it's a love story and all this stuff. Yeah. I think this Shabbat I do want to say, I was on a Zoom call, there was meant to be loads of people, someone bombed it, with a trolling, and that said life's not normal. And I think it is a good time to say it's hard, because people are starting to feel the void and not just the gain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Mourning, you talked about the burial, but there's a collective sense of mourning. It was just in there's a recent article the Harvard Business Review brought out about that we're feeling a sense of grief and some kind of sense of social deprivation, and even anticipatory grief that we don't know yet what that will be, but we don't really know how to kind of give voice to it and how to hold it.
Without trying to predict what the shadow looks like, it does seem to me this is going to cast a very long shadow, particularly for younger people, who are at the beginning of their adult lives, have been, particularly those who were around in 2008, 2009. This is a second blow in which their confidence about the future is going to be really undermined. In some way, it's always been my sense, Sarah, this is the way people in Israel live. They live in the moment because they always have the possibility that it's all going to blow up, literally or figuratively. And my guess is that, I remember teasing my parents when I was growing up that trying to remind them that the Depression was actually over. But it was never really over for them. It cast a shadow over their lives, their attitudes toward money and security were deeply affected by their having been in their late 20s and 30s during the Depression. And I can't help but imagine that this is going to have that kind of a long shadow.
I think there's sorry.
No, I wanted to ask, so what would you say to people that don't have formal authority right now? What would your message be to people like our participants who are early to mid-career professionals, volunteers, being involved in the Jewish world, getting on with their kind of day-to-day lives? What would you advise them? Where is the source of agency that they can find through this?
So I think that Marty is right that this will cast a shadow, but I think a lot of young people are saying, you see, we were right. All that flying and all that misuse of the earth and all the extreme capitalism and the polarization, there is a bigger issue here. So I think people will find agency because they won't put up with what they were objecting to before. So I think people will, are disturbed, are concerned, have been concerned, and now turning around and saying, look, it can't go on as it was before. And that will give people agency, young people.
Kind of unveil the real challenges that some of the real challenges that our society is facing. Wow.
Yes, and the way people have behaved, young people have behaved, can be a manifestation of that. That is, are they supporting people who are less well off than they are? Are they taking pains to conserve resources? What are you doing now that manifests the anger and frustration you feel at people like us who have screwed things up so badly? And trying to develop habits of being in the world which give voice to those values that they espousing. And you can do that in your daily life right now, you know, the way you treat people and how much of a sense of commitment you have. And there's a lot of local action, you know. I know of a neighborhood in Brooklyn where all the restaurants have banded together and they're featuring one restaurant each week and trying to get the community to support it by doing delivery and trying to support their employees so that they have a check every few weeks. And I think it is an opportunity for young people to step into the mess that we have created for them.
I think,
how do they, yeah, sorry.
Well, the local is a thing that young people have been really talking about, and this is proving the point.
Yeah. Yep.
So how do they partner with then the people in authority? I suppose that would be my last question, because it kind of sets up a them and us, the people that are important that cause the mess, and the young folks that are going to kind of clean it up. And I suppose I'm asking for an invitation to partner. And how do we do that?
Well, I think that people in authority, whether they got there because of birth or money or skill, or some of both, let's say, are anyway feeling more humble. This is a massive whack in the face for people in authority, and that is a good thing.
Well, and one of the consequences of that insight, I think, Rabbi Laura, is that someone in Sarah's position can look to younger people for collaboration and advice rather than trying to be the decider, you know?
Yeah.
Here are our choices, you know, what kind of an organization do you want us to be at this moment? You know,
yeah.
It's an opportunity to partner and empower people rather than to patronize and infantilize them. And you will learn, it goes back to what we were saying before, you'll learn by who steps up and who doesn't, you know? Who tries to figuratively troll what you're trying to do and who is hanging in there with you.
Yeah, yeah. And tomorrow is going to be our first day for, we've got over 60 people here in Israel who have joined a 2-day virtual summit, and we're going to explore those questions and those relationships. And it's my hope that that's what we're going to build, that with our humility and a bit of audacity from our participants, that in between that, we'll find something to be greater than the sum of our parts, and that when we come together, we'll be able to do it in ways where we can thrive, not just get out of this alive, but really in ways that we can thrive. So I want to thank both of you for having my back. We were really stuck, and I don't just mean in isolation. We were kind of stuck in a tough spot, and we've come back. And I think that is sometimes your behaviors show more than you can tell. So lots of gratitude.
Okay.
Stay well and safe, and look after yourselves and others.
And take care of all those people, Sarah. Nice to meet you, Rabbi Laura.
You, fandom.
It was a treat.
Fandom.
Bye. Bye.